Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, and we've got a lot of Eagles things to get to today, as we always do on our podcast. We're going to continue our positional preview with everyone's favorite position outlook. It's going to be linebackers, and Adam and I are just so excited for the. It oozes out of me, Adam, whenever we have to talk about linebackers and the Eagles' treatment and procurement of them. I know you're excited too.
Will it ever change? Will it ever change the linebacker position for this football team? It is amazing. The other 31 teams, I can't think of an instance with these other 31 teams where I just ignore the position like the Eagles have. And I understand where they put their cap dollars. I get that. But the lack of development for this linebacker position is it's almost hard to believe.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, Alex Singleton developed very nicely. It's kind of a rare instance of that. I mean, we can go through about 4 or 5 other guys in like 2 seconds that didn't develop well, like Nate Gerry, or or you bring in a guy like LJ Fort and you don't even bother to try to have him be on your team. And we'll see what happens with Davion Taylor. He'll be a big part of our discussion today or in this podcast. But yeah, it's it's kind of weird. I feel for the older Eagle fan who lived to see the Buddy days where they had great linebackers. Granted, they ran it a little bit differently, his style of defense. But then, and even in early Andy days, you at least had Jeremiah Trotter. You had a couple of guys who could play the position, and then they just gradually devalued it. Super Bowl was good. You had Jordan Hicks and Nigel Bradham, but we're at a point now where we really have to talk about what they're going to do with this entire unit under the new coaching staff.
Yeah, and my hope would be, because from what I've heard through the grapevine, is this staff will put bigger emphasis on player development on both sides of the football. Now, they haven't coached here yet, so that's great. Do it. I'll believe it when I see it. But that linebacker position has been an absolute joke. I'm talking about of their own players. You mentioned Bradham. Well, they didn't draft Bradham. They did Hicks, and then, of course, he walked. But they knew they were not going to compete for Hicks and $10 million a year. No, they shouldn't. No one should be paying that. That was not a good contract that the Cardinals did. But it would be nice that if they could draft and develop their own players at that position. It's certainly been a while.
Who's your favorite random Eagles linebacker that actually played a decent amount of snaps in the 2000s to the 2000s, say 10, 12, 15?
Ooh.
Anyway.
Of their own guy, of their own, or free agent?
And when I say favorite random one, I'm not talking about talent. I'm just saying like a guy who you just pops into your head and you smile.
Oh man. Mark Semino. Only because I'm old enough to remember the criticism of Mark Semino in this market. Oh my God, their Super Bowl run, that 04 season. People, what was okay? You were covering the team. What was the issue back then with him?
What was the issue?
Did he get a lot of criticism?
I don't remember because I jumped on the year after. I think they cut him the year that I started covering the team.
Okay. He was a starter. I'm almost certain. Okay, I'm almost certain he started. Man, he played for a couple seasons. He got a lot of criticism. I'm just trying to think. I like Dhani Jones. He did a good job.
Dhani was all right. Okay. I mean, he got criticized a lot, but he was actually fairly decent.
But Trotter would be the best one because he was homegrown.
Right.
Developed under Andy Reid, and then the controversial moved to Washington for more money. Then he came back here, as you know, lives in this area. At least he ended his career with Philly. But just the lack of development of this position. See, you don't have to draft these guys high. It's just that they don't develop. Is it a misevaluation on the players, or is the coaching not been good enough? And you mentioned LJ Fort. The guy I don't care what they say. He was their best linebacker 2 years ago in training camp, and they cut the guy because Ken Flagel didn't want him. I mean, that can't happen. Front office cannot let that happen. You can't cut this guy.
Well, anyway. Don't forget about the comp pick part of it as well. Cutting LJ.
I know, but are you not? But they're trying to get in the playoffs again. They were a playoff team.
No, listen, I'm not apologizing for them. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying it wasn't just because of a dislike. It was also because they knew that there was something to be gained by cutting him. All right, I'll answer my own question. I think when I think of the great random former Eagles linebackers, I think of Mike Labinjo. I think of Keith Adams, the missile or the rocket. I forget what they used to call him. He was short.
Oh, I got one. I got one for you. Nate Wayne. Not Bruce Wayne.
Nate Wayne. Yes. Yeah. Love Nate Wayne. How about, well, we all, I mean,
number 54.
Chris Gokong and Jamar Chaney and Akeem Jordan. Moses Foku.
This is what 7th rounder in 09, I think. This is when smaller late round draft picks, they missed completely on Matt McCoy. That was a terrible one.
Matt McCoy.
Too small.
Speaking of small, Brian Roll, 5 foot, 7.
God, he was, Stuart Bradley. I'll tell you what, though, they got that one right in terms of drafting a player that had a chance to be a star, but he blew his ACL out on flight night, but I call it a fright night because he tore his ACL.
That's right.
And he was never the same. Joe Mays. Remember Joe Mays?
Joe Mays. I remember Joe Mays. Absolutely. Man, you're right about this height thing. Like, they were short. Like, Brian Roll was 5'9" on like a really good day. Joe Mays was short. Who else was short? They had another really short. Adams, I mentioned, was short.
I got another one, and I'm pretty certain we've never mentioned this guy.
No, come on.
Folks out there, correct me if I'm wrong. Torrance Tank Daniels.
Tank, who went and won a Super Bowl with the Giants.
Did he really?
Yes, he did. I mean, it was a special teamer. But, yep, Tank Daniels. You know, my earliest recollection, Adam, when I jumped on the beat, was that the Eagles certainly devalued linebacker like they still do compared to others, but they really went down swinging, trying hard to bring in value linebackers who either were coming off injury or who had what they thought some good value. For example, Takeo Spikes, coming off the Achilles.
Takeo,
Ernie Sims, the number 9 overall pick, didn't work out. Tried to bring him in. The mid-season trade for Will Witherspoon. Remember that?
I know Will a little bit. Rams? Yeah. Will was a good player for the Rams. It just didn't work out, and the Panthers. All right, my favorite scrub. Okay, just because I love the name, Pago Tokafal. I just like
I forgot about Pago.
Right, the immortal. I for some reason I don't know why. I like JR. He hit the chain link fence read. You remember that one?
Well, yeah, he was not a linebacker.
No, but poor guy. Yeah, Eagle stories. That one, they had such high hopes for him.
Yeah.
What was your first year in the beat? Is it 08, 07?
2005 is when I started writing. I wasn't the beat writer, but I would go to do a lot of Eagle stories. In fact, because I lived in Jersey and still do, one of my first stories ever on the Eagles beat, maybe my first one, was the Drew Rosenhaus Next Question press conference on the lawn, the Morristown lawn of Terrell Owens. Yeah. So that was my early indoctrination.
Oh my God.
Into the craziness of the Eagles beat right there. That was great.
Sean Barber was
Barber. Yeah.
Remember him? Yeah.
Absolutely. Then he went to play in Kansas City. And then I think he came back to the Eagles. Yeah.
Yep. No, you're right about here are a couple good ones for you. From your first year, if your first full year was 05, or first year you mentioned Keith Adams. Right, he was a smaller outside linebacker.
He was the weak side linebacker. I think Trott was middle, and was Semino still the
Semino was on the outside? Yep. And Dahani Jones.
Right. Dahani, the Renaissance man.
Here are the backups. This is another great scrub. For those of you who are over 40, you might remember Justin Enna.
Oh my God!
I shouldn't remember that. There's something wrong.
He made the 53 man.
He was on the roster that year. Sure.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Greg Richmond, Dedrick Roper, Jason Short. Remember?
Jason Short used to get into fights with John Runyon every training camp.
Really? Okay.
Runyon couldn't stand him because Jason was what you would call that high motor, kind of undersized gnat of a linebacker. He'd come off the edge, and Runyon just didn't like having to deal with these high motor guys in the dregs of August, so they would get into it quite often.
God, you've got a good memory, but
these are my first days on the beat. I don't even know what to expect, and I see this 6 foot, 8 gargantuan trying to pound away on little Jason Short.
You say little Jason Short. Yeah. But here's one that didn't work out. Another one where they were bringing these. He actually went up. You might remember better than I. Brian Smith, who was a second-round pick, who was a complete bust. Was he a lot?
Yeah, but he was part of that wave of we're gonna draft like 250-pound edge rushers. I think he played linebacker in college. If I'm correct, it began with an F, something state. Free.
I don't
Oh
remember.
man, it was somewhere, a small school in either Texas or Louisiana.
He was terrible.
Oh, I wish I could remember. Yeah. He was a 3rd-round pick, and they thought he was going to be an edge rusher.
I think he was a 2nd-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he?
No, I think it was 3rd. I'm pretty sure it's 3rd. You can check on that, but
I just remember him being such a reach, and he did literally nothing.
Nice guy too. I swear the Eagles have
McNeese State.
McNeese, that's what it was.
You're right. Good call. 3rd round, 80th pick overall. Not that missing a 3rd rounder is a big deal, but he didn't really contribute anything. And then they brought in, although he played DN, and this is you'll remember this before we really get started here. This is actually, I love doing this because they've had such a revolving door at linebacker for like 15 years. There were a bunch of low round or undrafted free agents who would make it. Akeem Jordan, you mentioned him in passing. He did okay for a while.
Yeah, he was all right. He made it because the Eagles, it's not hard to make it on the Eagles.
Right, but he would be kind of like that. For a team that actually value linebackers, he'd be a 5th linebacker, but he would wind up starting some because they just were not putting any money in a linebacker. And if they did, it was a guy that was sort of a mid-level free agent, like a Dahani Jones. Tracy White came in here. Might remember Tracy White?
I do remember Tracy White. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, and then of course there was Jamar Chaney had a couple of decent games, and Omar Gaither had a couple of decent games, and man, they just kept rotating and rotating.
And then Keenan Clayton. Remember Keenan Clayton?
Man, Keenan Clayton.
He was so small. He was a college safety.
He was a safety. He should have been a safety. Yeah. Oh, by the way, we forgot to mention the guy who started as a 4th-round rookie and didn't play very well, Casey Matthews.
Oh God! Talk about the kids in their 30s know this one. The venom that fans had for Casey Matthews. Oh my God! What was it? Because he was. Why were people?
Well, there's a couple of reasons here.
Go ahead. Thank you.
A, his name was Casey Matthews, and at the same time he was drafted. Is it Clay Matthews from Green Bay? Right. Yeah. Clay Matthews was like a Pro Bowl linebacker the year before and doing all that. I remember one interview. He goes, "Guys, I'm not my brother." He said, "I'm not my brother." He's like, "We don't even play the same position. He's a pass rusher. I'm a middle linebacker. We're not the same." I feel like if his name was like Casey Johnson, like nobody would have cared. But he was Casey Matthews.
Makes sense. Yeah, because man, the venom fan, like there's like the fans will go after a player. This is probably in the infancy of social media, but it was unbelievable. Maybe it was on message boards. Who knows? But I do distinctly remember that, and we'll get started. Actually, the one guy I mentioned this probably a year or two ago, and it's one of the few. This is when I used to go to a lot of the press conference, and I'm responsible for this one. I should have never asked it to Sean McDermott.
Okay.
So I said, "Sure."
No, that was your question.
You know where I'm going.
Shark?
You know where I'm going. You got it.
Shark? Oh my God.
But I didn't say shark. I just said,
no,
here's what happened. Ernie Sims, I played fantasy with individual defensive players. He put up a bleep load of tackles. I said, "Coach, what can you tell us about Ernie Sims? He's like a shark in the water." I was like, "Wow, okay." So I asked him a follow-up question. He started going on and on and on. You grab the quotes, and everybody was taking those quotes. He was so bad. He would. What did you say before? You told the story. Did he knock somebody out, one of his own teammates?
Yeah, I mean, if Ernie Sims was the shark in the water, then Eldra Buckley was the chum, because Andy would dial up at least 10, kind of screens or passes into the flat, for the third stringers to Eldra Buckley, and Ernie Sims would hit him. He would annihilate him almost every single time. Now, the thing about Ernie Sims, as you know, he was so fast that he over pursued a lot. So if you were a running back who caught the ball in the flat, all you actually had to do was have just enough nimbleness or athleticism to kind of sidestep it. Or if you had like an explosive move, you could just literally take one step to the left and watch Ernie Sims fly 100 miles past you. But Eldra was just not smooth like that. So he would literally catch the ball and bam, he would get dead.
Yeah. You know what's so funny about Ernie Sims? He was probably 218 to 225. That's all he weighed.
Yeah.
Super fast, former first rounder for the Lions, but he was terrible here.
Florida
He's
State.
coaching now in college football. Good luck to you, Ernie.
There you go.
Anyway,
I enjoyed that stroll down memory lane.
go.
Speaking of strolls down memory lane, our listeners are going to get a chance to do that a little bit this week. As we've been telling you about, we're going to debut it Wednesday, 6 a.m. on our YouTube channel and our podcast platforms. Will be the debut of Q&A featuring former Eagles Quentin Michael, former Eagle safety Quentin Michael, and former Eagle wide receiver Jason Avant. So we look forward, make sure everybody catches that. And then 8 o'clock, is it Tuesday night? 8 o'clock.
Eastern. Yeah.
You and I, Adam Caplan, Geoff Mosher, will be doing our first Ask ITB live stream. So you can catch us doing our show live. If you're on our platform, and we'll have all the information, get it to you on out through Twitter and social media and Facebook. You can ask us a question on the platform that we're going to be using. You can send us a question beforehand. We'll try to answer it. So a half hour, about maybe a little longer, depending on the questions. And Adam and I will answer your questions. So we look forward to that.
Awesome. It's been First time we've done this before. Yeah, this is going to be cool. So make sure you check it out, and then we'll be able to put that. It'll be archived, correct? That we can put on YouTube.
Yes, then it will live on our YouTube channel after that, and perhaps our podcast platform as well. So you'll be able to listen to it if you miss it.
Great, awesome.
Or watch it if you miss it.
Oh, right. And then you go.
Yeah, I was going to say, so just to put it all in perspective for everybody before we move on, we're waiting on one more announcement that we'll be able to make.
Oh, it's a big one. Yeah,
not official yet, but as of right now, you catch Inside the Birds podcast on Monday and Thursday. You get Q&A on Wednesday, and of course Tuesday night, as we just mentioned, your live stream. So you'll pretty much, and of course I should talk about this more. If you want to hear us every single day, we do our Football at 4 interview with 97.3 ESPN, 4 o'clock every day, and then we post it on our YouTube channel, usually between 6 and 7 o'clock, sometimes a little earlier. So if you miss that as well, if you don't live in the area, if you can't stream it at 4 o'clock, then you can always go to our YouTube channel to hear our Football at 4 interview. I'm Monday and Wednesday, Andrew DeCecco Tuesday, Thursday, and Adam Caplan on Friday. All right, enough with the promos. Let's get on to what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into linebackers, Adam, let's talk again about this defensive scheme, because in order to understand why it's important that this team develops linebackers better, we have to understand the framework with when they'll be working. I mean, I don't want to say you can get away with the kind of linebackers you had in the past under Jim's system, but Jim emphasized your front end, your front four rush, and re-diverting the running backs on the way to the quarterback, and it was supposed to make it a little bit easier in some cases to make tackles if you're a linebacker. But this will be a different style of defense. Yeah,
this is going to be, as I understand it, more of a read and react front like Minnesota's. A bunch because when you do that, and when it's not about the wide nine, the wide nine is basically going to be junked. I'm not saying they won't play a little bit of it. By the way, Zimmer's used it before, I was told, but not very little. But another fact that someone gave me, someone from another team, a lot of teams use a small portion of the wide nine. They'll do it in nickel, especially in law. Let's say it's 3rd and 15 or more. Some teams will do it just to get a pass rush. You just want to get upfield. So, but in general, I'm not expecting to see a lot of it. Obviously, very few snaps of it, if at all, anymore. So it's going to be about disguise and scheme on the back end. And this should be a secondary dominated defense. Now, that's, to me, music to my ears if I'm an Eagles fan. However, you need better personnel on the back end. And that's something they're going to have to do. And some people might disagree with this. I don't say it needs to be a defensive draft, but the guys that they have to draft here, to me, should be somewhat on the back end. Corner, they probably need to get a couple corners here. Linebackers, we're going to start breaking that down in a minute. And then obviously some depth on the defensive line. DN, they definitely have to draft. And D-tackle, they don't have any depth. So there's a lot of work to see. This is the thing when in our previous show, we discussed whether this is a rebuild, retooling. What is it? This defense is somewhere between a rebuild and retooling. They got a lot of work to do on this defense.
They certainly do. I think they have a whole lot of work to do on the 53, but you're right. The defense especially.
Yeah.
And then obviously not just the work to procure talent and remake it, but obviously, Adam, when you introduce a new scheme, then you've got guys who are going to be, I don't want to say they're going to be a step slow, but they are learning things. Like we saw this with Javon Hargrave, just trying to learn his place in Jim Schwartz's scheme after doing it a little bit differently in Pittsburgh. So now all these guys are going to be doing something a little differently.
Good point.
I do wonder this though, Adam. I always felt like the wide 9 was more favorable to speed rushers because it gave them extra space and, you know, you allowed to kind of shoot off the edges. And if you could just race past an offensive tackle who may not be fleet of foot, you had a pretty good advantage. I wonder, the Eagles don't really have speed rushers. Brendan Graham is more of a bull rusher. Derek Barnett is not an explosive athlete. Remember, he came out and they said he's more of a technician than he was an explosive
more
athlete.
of a bendy.
Bendy, right. That's what I mean by technician, right? So I do wonder if not playing the wide 9 might favor them a little bit. Brandon's going to be a little closer to the quarterback because if you're not flexed out all the way to wide 9, you're a little closer. I just think of all the times in his career that Brandon either collapsed the pocket or came close to a sack, but never got it. I wonder in some small part of me, and maybe I'm just overthinking it.
Yeah, don't know yet.
A little closer might help him.
I mean, today is March 1st, so we're going to learn a lot more. We're digging. We're trying to get as much as we can on the defense. I've talked to some guys who've worked with John Gannon, and a couple of guys said the same thing. They're going to run a lot of Minnesota's stuff, and it's going to be secondary based. And I don't know if they have the guys to do it. I mean, Maddox needs to move inside. That was an absolute mistake of playing him on the outside. You play him where he was drafted to be. We knew at the time in 2018 he was absolutely drafted to be their nickel corner. Get him back there. Get someone on the outside opposite Slay. Linebacker-wise, as we get into that, to me, you got to rebuild. This is a total rebuild of their linebackers. Let's get this right for a change, right?
Yeah.
No more nickel and dime in this thing. So
no pun intended.
Right. Look, Nick Rallis is here. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, he doesn't have an assistant. This is where they really should have a senior defensive assistant. I don't know why they're not doing that. Again, there's no timeline on adding somebody like that. Man, why don't you bring somebody in to help these guys? Especially, guy's 27 years old.
Yeah, no, again, by the way, that's how old Alex Singleton is. So their best linebacker and the linebackers coach are the same age. That's going to be a really interesting storyline for this season. You mentioned the whole Mike Zimmer thing. Now, Mike doesn't do it as much as he used to, but he's kind of known as the godfather of the double A gap blitzes or the cross blitz, if you want to call it that. He's just known for blitzing his linebackers up the middle, however way you want to slice it. But if you look at Minnesota, I mean, he's had some pretty good, fast, athletic linebackers like an Eric Kendricks or Anthony Barr, right? Yeah. So, and I'm not diminishing what we saw from Alex Singleton. I don't know that you put him in the same kind of light as athleticism with those guys that I just mentioned. But even after that, who's like TJ Edwards is a nice story of a rookie free agent who's plays downhill. He plays the run well. Last year, he put himself in position to compete to be in the nickel because he lost some weight. He didn't get it. It wound up being Duke Riley, who is also athletic and undersized. But I don't know that these guys have what Gannon might be looking for as far as the nose for the blitz, the understanding, the tenacious downhill nature that way. I don't know.
Yeah, so let's break it down. Their UFAs are Nate Gerry and the aforementioned Duke Riley. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine a scenario where Nate Gerry comes back. Why? Because his godfather, so to speak, Ken Flajole, is no longer here. So why would Nate Gerry come back? He was a below average linebacker. The only reason why he was here, quite frankly, in my opinion, is because of Flajole. Because Flajole, as I understand it, never backed off that he was smart and he executed and all this. Well, the guy just loved the kid. The reality is Nate Gerry should never have been a starting linebacker anywhere, anyhow. He just shouldn't have been.
I agree. I think he got exposed as a starting linebacker.
Yep.
I think he can be a sub-package linebacker in this league somewhere, maybe even with the Eagles. But
he's a backup player, though. The bottom line, he's a 15-20 snap guy. Duke Riley, up and down with the Eagles. He has positional versatility. His contract's up. He does have extensive starting experience starting with Atlanta. I wouldn't rule him out. Gerry, I would be shocked if he returned. Alex
Those are the
Singleton,
only two unrestricted ones,
yes,
correct?
Alex Singleton is technically an exclusive rights free agent, which means he's not really a free agent.
Right.
The Eagles control his rights. He can't go anywhere. Let's put it this way. If they don't tender him, they really didn't want him back. They clearly don't think he could help them. I would say this. If I do expect him back, he is not definitely a starting player here. Despite how well he played last season, it was a great story. You have a new coaching staff. You have a new D coordinator. You have a new linebackers coach. Mm-hmm. Nothing's given to any of these players. This is going to be a theme of ours, folks. Starting a quarterback for this football team. There are very few players. When I say very few, there aren't a lot of players who you're going to say he's definitely starting, other than Graham, obviously, Slay, the three or four veteran offensive linemen, Miles Sanders, Goddard. We don't know. Right. Quarterback's not a given. None of the linebackers are a given. Outside corner, opposite Slay is not a given. At least one of the safety positions is not a given. There's a lot of mystery and a lot of roles to be determined. And here's the problem at linebacker as we transition back to it. If we don't have May and June OTAs, we're not going to get answers until August with these linebackers.
Yeah, why wouldn't we? I'm still confused on why there wouldn't be May and June OTA. How could there have been a season but not OTAs? Does that make any sense to you?
The commissioner would not commit to it. Now, it's funny because the COVID numbers are down, which is a great thing. But the commissioner at the Super Bowl was not going to commit to this definitely having an offseason. So
I think that was more of a technical, like he couldn't commit because there was probably a lot to be worked out. It may
right, and you were worried about the second,
right.
You know, the reports of another virus, but
new variants, right?
Correct. The variants. But so far so good. The numbers are down, and I agree with you. The league did an incredible job with the NFLPA of managing this issue. You got to do. They know. Here's the thing. They know how to handle it. There's zero reason why they can't do this.
Yeah, I can't imagine you can have an NFL season, but then you couldn't have OTAs afterward.
Yeah, come on.
I would be absolutely stunned if they don't figure out a way to have OTAs and mini camps. And maybe it's that the commissioner knew that before that can happen, there still has to be some talks of the CBA to adjust it for certain things, just like they did last year. There had to be CBA discussions on what the health and safety protocols were.
Yeah, right.
So you may need a new round of discussion. So maybe that's why the commissioner pulled back and said, look, right now I can't guarantee anything because we all have to be have a seat at the table first and discuss what we're going to do, which is what he should do, really, if that's the case.
Right. And it's going to be important for those guys, like the guys who are under contract. You mentioned TJ Edwards earlier. Mm-hmm. This staff needs to get to know him. Sean Bradley, though he's backup, if he can make the team, it's going to be based on how he does in the offseason, and we're certainly a big part of it. Gerard Avery is going to move to strong side linebacker. Davion Taylor, who needs a ton of work, and we got
to talk about him.
Right, we'll get to him in a minute. And Rashad Smith and Joe Bocci are two guys who are holdovers. So, if this is not, and I don't want to take shots at these guys, but if we ranked 1 through 32 NFL teams, if this is not the bottom of the NFL linebacker, I don't know what is.
And we certainly know this. It hurt that. I know Singleton got better, and it didn't become as much of an issue, although I would say some of the other issues on the team in November and December, namely Carson Wentz and the offense, overshadowed some of the defensive, like all we did in the first 3 or 4 weeks was talk about how weird it was to see Carson not playing well. And then let's talk about Nate Gerry and how bad he is, because that's what September was for us. All those talks died as the season went on, but it's not because the linebackers were so much better. Alex Singleton was better, but there were just so many other things going wrong. And then Jalen Hurts starting that it kind of overshadowed defensive storylines.
There's no doubt. It's a great point. There was no doubt that Nate Gerry in the last 5 years, the venom that the fans had, I mentioned Casey Matthews, times this by 5. This kid Nate Gerry, poor guy, in the Pittsburgh game, obviously, cost him the touchdown, but that was a great coaching decision. That was a audible by Ben Roethlisberger. But fact of the matter is, he cannot come back, Nate Gerry, under any way, shape, or form. I'd be shocked. I'll tell you what, that would be the upset of the offseason if Nate Gerry's back. That would be a shocker. That would certainly be a shocker. All right, let's continue to talk about linebackers, some other players. But first, let's remind everybody to head on over to phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans'
experience with their coverage of all of the professional sports teams. They cover them like nobody else can. They got great podcasts, great content. Just go to their Twitter account also at PHL Sports Nation and read their stuff, phlsportsnation.com. Let's pause for another moment to hear from our other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. All right, if you stop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them that Adam and Geoff sent you. You'll get a great deal. Trust us. All right, so I don't think that I think Alex Singleton, Adam, showed at least enough to say he comes back as a starter until somebody can supplant him. I think that this is an area that they have to obviously work on in the draft. You've heard me screaming about if you're not going to use a first-round pick, and if you're not going to put a lot of free agent money into a linebacker, then you need to at least treat it with a second or a third, like higher in the draft. They did that last year. And I still wasn't satisfied because the information that you and I got on Davion Taylor was that third was a little high compared to where other teams had him ranked. So I sit here today and I say, you got to develop this position. I just wonder if their mindset is, no, we're actually good with Davion Taylor year 2. He's going to really come into his own.
Way. Yeah,
I hope not, but
no, I know the guy could run. There's no question the limited tape that he had, and we knew that coming in. But he is a project. Now, their hope was at the time they drafted him, by year 3, he would be absolutely their nickel linebacker. Because in today's NFL, man, you need guys who could cover, and if he could be that guy, he could be here a long time. Because nickel linebackers against tight ends, these guys have unbelievable value. So we'll see. Again, he gets a fresh start with a new group, with a new coaching staff. So this is another guy. Man, does he need a May and June? That would really help.
Well, let me ask you this. Is Gannon, from what you hear or just what you feel, do you think that he's going to play more cover 2 than his predecessor? Because that's kind of an Eberflus thing.
Yeah,
right?
Well,
that's
they're going to be more zone, right? But that's Indy and Minnesota completely different. They're not even remotely close.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Indianapolis does play.
It's going to be more
2,
Minnesota to me. Cover 3.
Okay, so all right.
Yeah.
Minnesota's a little bit different because if you're going to play some cover 2, then you really need. You're not bringing that extra safety in the box. You need to have your linebackers be smart downhill, understand how to play the run keys, and that's where I would say that puts a lot of pressure on Davion Taylor to really not just be a great athlete, but to be a real student of the game at that position.
And he in that area, because remember, he's very inexperienced, so he needs work. Right now, this is the biggest mystery of the football team. People say Hurts is somewhat of a mystery. Maybe, maybe not. But linebacker is a complete mystery. There are no starting jobs. There's nothing etched in stone. As much as we liked Alex Singleton this season, he's not guaranteed anything. He's got a new coaching staff. So I expect to be on the team and no worse than the 4th linebacker. But these guys don't know him. This is the thing, is when you have a new staff, no sacred cows, man. If you're a guy that played well and came out of nowhere like Alex Singleton, you're not guaranteed anything because these guys don't know you. So and they've got a young linebackers coach and who doesn't have he's never run a room before.
Right.
So to me, if I'm Jonathan Gannon's going to have to be involved here. He's going to have to help this kid out.
Who would you bank more on? Davion Taylor, Duke Riley, or TJ Edwards kind of really showing the type of improvement so where you're comfortable starting him alongside Alex Singleton.
Well, Riley's not under contract, to be clear. So
that's a good point. They have to. Yep. That's true. By the way, we should address this. Mike Gill asked us both this question last week, and it's a really great question. The Eagles have to work so hard. We know this. Howie Roseman has to make so many moves just to become compliant with the cap. But really, the goal is to be enough under the cap so that you can bring. You're going to have to sign some free agents. You need a backup quarterback. Yeah,
their cap thing is not their cap situation. As I go through it, is not going to be nearly as bad. Not only that. If this TV deal gets done gives the NFL enough time with the NFLPA to reconcile the cap because this extra TV money, I'm not saying it's going to be $200 million, but it may be much better than 180. So yeah, they'll look. The problem is the Wentz contract. Obviously, they have to account for that, and that they have to account for it by March 17th, and that's going to certainly be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to do some extensions at some point within the next 2 weeks or so. They'll get some extensions done to lower cap figures. We've talked about Derek Barnett. I don't see any way he plays at $10.065 million.
Mm-hmm.
They told teams he was not available at the trade deadline. They absolutely should keep him. This is a guy that's shown something from that 17 draft, which is terrible a draft, but he definitely has been a success story to a certain extent. Certainly needs to be better. Other than that, there are other guys that they could take a look at restructuring. So I don't think it's going to be as dire as we once thought, but it's certainly not going to be great. It's not a good situation. This is their most challenging cap situation that they've been through. But we talked about the Zach Ertz situation. They'll get that resolved soon, one way or the other.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you. I think we're finished on linebacker here. We went through everything.
Yeah, we're done. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right, because I want to move on. I want to harp on what you just said about the cap. So first, let me just tell everybody: download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use the promo code ITB to get all your sign-up bonuses. That's promo code ITB to get all of your sign-up bonuses only at the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use that promo code ITB. If the Eagles were $30 million under the cap, or just really good, forget the number, right? Let's just say they have their normal amount of cap flexibility. Do you think they would definitely trade Zach Ertz?
Definitely. I would say more. I would say better chance they would than they wouldn't.
Okay. Do you think they would definitely release Malik Jackson?
No. Here's why. That when Jackson's released, they don't have a third, fourth, or fifth D tackle. They just don't. Raekwon Williams is not guaranteed anything. They don't know anything about the guy. New staff. Right. The only two things they know is Hargrave starting next to Cox. That's all they know. That's it.
Right. So I only ask that because I'm sure we can go through this with some other players that may get moved here or there, because I think that sometimes we overlook the idea, because we expect guys to get cut.
Yeah.
And then we say, you know what? It's not, as you're saying, it's not that dire because, 6 or 7 guys are going to move, not going to be here off the cut. But those are 6 or 7 guys that could still play. Like they could legitimately, if the Eagles were in a different position, still be a good contributor to a team that might have had Super Bowl aspirations, but now doesn't. So yes, you're right. It's not dire, because they're rebuilding, but it sucks for them because they have to get rid of guys who can still produce.
Let's put it this way. There's no way that Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey are going to be here. I don't care if they're
that I believe in. I agree with that.
Yeah, right. No chance.
No matter what.
Right. Zach is marginally, because Goddard's the guy. Zach is 30 now. He's a declining player. How much he's declining remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he had a bad ankle last season. I totally get that. That's fair. But you just wonder where he's at in his career. Goddard is the guy there. He was drafted to be the guy, and he's going to be the guy. So we know that. That's a fact. It's the way I understand it. The question is now, what could Zach Ertz, what could he be at this point of his career, 30 years old, for another football team? That's what the new football team has to decide, what he can be. Is he a starter? Is he a 1A, where a guy like Goddard, if there's a comparable player with another team, could he be a complement to that guy? Who knows?
Right.
So they're in a situation where, and we talked about this on the last show, they're a team that, and I think Jeffrey Lurie said it well. I believe he was the one who said the team's in a transitional phase. I think he said that in his press conference. I look at that. Yeah. That's the best way to look at this team's in a transition. We don't need to call it a rebuild. Absolutely they're not a playoff team to me. Do you see any way this team could be in the playoffs?
I do, only because
really?
Only because I never want to. I'm not saying I think they're going to be good, but there's an extra playoff team now, so you only have to be close to 500 just to be in it. Correct?
The Bears got in at 8-8. Yeah, exactly.
There you go. All right. So at B, it's very possible that Jalen Hurts winds up being a fairly good quarterback in this league. I mean, I don't know. He could also wind up being terrible. I have no idea. But I'm just saying, I'm leaving the door open. If that happens, you get these offensive linemen back. We know they'll be still pretty good in the trenches. I mean, I think Washington's a good team. They still need to get a quarterback. I don't know what's going to happen with Alex Smith, but That defense definitely scares me. But the Giants, they're never going to scare me, right, with Daniel Jones. And certainly Dallas can be scary offensively, but their defense stunk last year.
Yep.
So look, I'm not trying to sell anybody on the Eagles are going to be great or a playoff team. I'm just saying I've seen stranger things happen. I wouldn't just completely slam the door on it.
Okay. But we need to see free agency, though. They're not going to be heavily involved, and we need to see the draft. Yeah. So we're saying this on March 1st. So who the hell knows?
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. The Super Bowl year, I had them at 9-7, and I thought for sure that was being reasonable, and they wound up winning the Super Bowl. So what the hell do I know?
I know. I didn't even think they were going to be that good. I was on record saying I thought they were 500 or a little under.
Well, remember they were 7-9, and I know from talking to the Eagles then they thought this team really underachieved. Even Wentz's first year in 16, they thought they should have been better, and then they took the big jump, the crazy jump in year 2.
Right.
So you don't know. Again, we just started March here, so we got to see who else is trimmed off the roster. Now, one thing before we get out of here, I do want to mention. You talked about the offensive line. Lane Johnson coming off significant surgery. Brandon Graham coming off of Brandon Brooks, coming off another major injury. We'll see on Kelce though. That my sense is again we'll see. We're going to find out very soon with Kelce whether he's coming back or not. But if he doesn't come back, although I think there's a better chance that he does, but if he doesn't, they don't have his replacement on the roster. I don't see them, whether Kelce's done now or next year. I don't see them, Geoff. I just don't. I don't think that his replacement is on the roster.
I'm surprised that you say that. Is it because you think that they like Seumalo enough at left guard that they don't want to move him, or that because they drafted him with that in mind?
Well, they did, but see, again, that was then, and this is now. Isaac is established at left guard. He just has turned out to be a solid football player, probably a little bit better than most people thought. He's probably not going to be a Pro Bowler. He's in what I call that category, a step below Pro Bowl, just a solid, dependable guard. He's not perfect. Right. Every once in a while, he's not going to play quite as well, but he's a solid football player. He's been a good story as a third-round pick at 16 after a very rough start his first 2 years. But they're just, you can't depend on older players. You just can't. It's if. That's why, to me, this is at best a 9-7 team. I say this. It's March 1st, for goodness sake. So we don't really know anything, but they have so much work. This team is in total transition.
Definitely, but I'm going to ask you again though why you think that they wouldn't move Seumalo to center.
I think because the offensive line coach does not like to do that. We've been through this before.
He doesn't like to do it in the middle of the year. But
you're right, but he doesn't. He likes cross training. I get that, but okay. Isaac is because again, okay. Let's say you do that. Let's say whether it's 21 or 22, you move Seumalo to center.
Okay.
Nate Herbig's not a starting player. He's an excellent backup center guard. They think they've learned that. We know nothing about Sua Opeta. You and I have talked about Jack Driscoll. Driscoll needs to have that offseason if he puts weight on. You outlined for us last summer how much Jeff Stoutland likes Driscoll.
Right.
Definitely, so he put some good tape together in limited time. He needs, we're projecting him to potentially be the replacement of Lane Johnson in a couple of years, or potentially being the replacement for Brandon Brooks. But that time is not right now. He's not. I know he had very limited snaps at Auburn at center, or maybe in practice or something like that. But right now, they don't quite know who that guy is going to be for Kelce when he's done.
Yeah, I guess that's why it's hard. Look, you're not going to go out. Let's say Kelce tomorrow says, I love you guys, but I'm done. All right. Well, it's hard to, you're not going to have enough money to buy a free agent center, a good one. And that's not a position that you normally address really highly in the draft. You pick it like Kelce, lower in the draft. And hope that you can address it certainly third, fourth, fifth, higher than six, and hope to get a starter. And many teams do. But I don't know that they have the faith that a rookie will once again be able to just step in and handle it. Sometimes, like Kelce or Corey Linsley, it happens. I don't understand. Like, you have a guy, Isaac Seumalo, who you thought could play that. Can play in the NFL. He's good at what he does. And I'd rather have to replace a left guard than a center, I would think. So if I can move the center and then get Driscoll in there.
You and I talked about this actually early in our tenure with this show in 18, and in the spring we did talk about how Seumalo was drafted to take Kelce's job, and then Kelce revived his career. But things have changed. Now, it's all going to be up to Jeff Stoutland with obviously input from the front office, how they want to handle it. I'm not saying Seumalo can't do it, but he's been so good at left guard. Why would you want to change it? But I understand your information, your thought process. If you still think Isaac can do it, move him in there. And yeah, you're right. It's funny. We've talked about this before. We haven't talked about it in a while. A lot of teams will tell you privately that they think the center position is kind of the weakest in the offensive line. If you really graded the tape and were honest, there aren't a lot of good centers. Kelce's just been special. He's sort of an outlier.
Right.
There just aren't a lot of good ones. Alex Mack has been pretty good for several years and has made a lot of money, by the way. But it's like when you have one, you hold on to it. And Kelce's been that guy.
He has been that guy. The Eagles have been fortunate in that regard. I mean, Jamal Jackson was about 6-year center, and then Kelce did it for so long. And before that, they had Hank Fraley for a couple of years.
Buns.
Went to a Super Bowl with Hank Fraley. Honey Buns.
And by the way, do you remember Jamal's story, how he found out that Kelce was starting? What did he tell it? He told it on our Sunday pregame show, right?
I think it was the Sunday pregame show.
Oh, such a great story. Cliff Notes version. Did they tell it? Did Stout? Who told?
Big Red called him in. He said Andy Reid called him in and told him. Yeah.
What was it? That training camp?
It wasn't. It could have been Stoutland because Howard Mudd was the.
Was it my okay?
Line coach,
Okay. Right. Thank you. So was it Kelce's rookie season? They make the decision immediately.
Yeah, no, it was pretty close. It was in the middle of, it was like the first week or two of training camp, and all of a sudden Kelce and some other kid was running with it. And I remember tweeting like, this is very odd. It must be a maintenance day for the the older guys. And then Jamal hit me up with a text during this is back at Lehigh when you practice, then you go for lunch, then you come back. He hit me up in the in-between. He goes, nah, no maintenance day. Those are the starters. And my eyes almost fell out of my head.
Wow.
I'm like, Jason Kelce is a starter? He's a 6th-round pick.
And remember, he lost all the weight through the appendectomy. And you just knew he was a pretty good athlete, but no one really knew anything about him. And what a stud. Oh, my God. What a player. I'll tell you what, if he comes back and plays this year, which there's a realistic possibility. Now, if he retires, I don't know that he'll make the Hall of Fame or get consideration, but if he plays this year, makes another Pro Bowl, you got to start talking about the Hall of Fame with him, don't you think?
He didn't. He just did make the Pro Bowl again this year, didn't he?
I know people want to say it wasn't his best year, but
well, that's a good question because I feel like with the centers, and I'd have to go look, the ones who were in the Hall of Fame, I believe they've got like almost double-digit Hall of Fame. I mean, you're talking about like the Mike Websters of the world, right? Yeah. Dermontti Dawson,
Jim Otto,
who?
Jim Otto, 00 for the Raiders.
Yeah, Jim Otto. Is Kevin Mawae in the Hall of Fame? Did he finally make it?
Well, that's a good question. Why do I see a yellow jacket on him? I think he did.
I feel like Kevin Mawae made. I'd have to go back and check.
He's coached for the Colts now, I think.
He is coaching for the Colts, I believe. But I don't know how many Pro Bowls or All Pros did Mawae make?
Don't know. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. But let's put it this way. I know Guy Morris growing up. He was Eagles center number 52 or 62, like Kelce. I can't remember. But anyway, he was pretty good. But Kelce, in my memory, is the best Eagles center. It just
Kevin Mawae is in the Hall of Fame. He made eight Pro Bowls and 3 All Pros. So I would say right now, if Jason Kelce retired, it's probably a no. Like he's on the ballot and doesn't make it.
That's fair.
But if he plays a year, makes another either Pro Bowl or All Pro, it gives him a pretty good shot. I think that would be. I think he's made 2 All Pros, right? So that would be a third if he made another one. Okay. So it would be very Kevin Mawae like. Yeah.
Heck of a draft pick. So there's your look at. It's funny with this show. I didn't know which the linebackers were what they were, but I like that we got into other stuff. So
yeah, I want to close off real quickly though on one more thing.
Yeah.
On Russell Wilson and the very odd teams that his agent listed that he would go to: New Orleans, Chicago, Dallas, and Miami. Was it? I can't remember what the fourth one was. Yeah. What a weird kind of no common thread among all those 4 teams. New Orleans must have been like, if I'm the North, I'm like offended. The other three teams stink, and it's like,
right. I don't know.
Why do you want to come play for us?
Well, Miami doesn't stink. They were 10-6. They just missed the playoffs.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Although Tua got pulled twice, would have got pulled another time if Fitzpatrick was not on the COVID list. But yeah, certainly a bizarre story. And I'll tell you what, I had put a couple scoops out. I did a video for a company called Sports Grid. I'm telling you, Pete Carroll is such a micromanager of offense. So to start the season, I had a little bit of a report that Pete is finally going to give in. He's going to let Russ cook.
Yeah.
They came out throwing the season.
They did.
It was incredible. And then Pete micromanaged Brian Schottenheimer, and the passing numbers went down the tubes in the second half. Russell did. He struggled in the second half. And if you're Russell Wilson, you finally got your wish. They're going to come out throwing. And then you junk and their defense is terrible. Like, it's not the offensive coordinator's job to worry about what the defense does. Your job is to score points. And these defensive coaches who micromanage offensive coaches, just pathetic. Anyway, it's my pet peeve.
Do you think he'll get? I'm sorry, it was the Raiders. It wasn't Dolphins. So it was three kind of teams, and then the Saints. It was Cowboys, Saints, Raiders, and Bears.
Yeah, and look, you got the Dak situation, and then you got Derek Carr. The Raiders keep telling people he's not available. Let me tell you something. He'll be available if Russell Wilson really wants to go there, and the Seahawks are willing to trade him. You go get him. Here, unfortunately, you got the $33.8 million dead money. You couldn't do it. You're not going to be traded. See, the thing is, it's like with teams are in it for or want to get Deshaun Watson. How much are you going to mortgage over your future to put a competitive team around this quarterback? You got to be careful with that stuff.
Sure. So how much would a team have to incur if it traded for Russell Wilson? Because that $39 million, some of it's going to go to Seattle, correct?
Well, no. What it is the way it would work is all the signing bonus proration goes to Seattle. They get zapped with it, $39 million.
So that's what I mean. So if you trade for Russell Wilson,
yes, they get zapped with $39 million, but the $19 million goes to the new team. It's such a great trade. It's such a great contract to acquire. Listen to these base salaries: 21, $19 million, 22, $19 million plus his $5 million roster bonus, so $24 million. Oh my God, that's all you would owe him. In 21, at 23, you'd owe him $26 million. Oh, what a great contract to acquire! $26 million for one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. Where do I sign up for that?
I know. Well, unfortunately, the Eagles, even if they wanted him and made a call, I don't know how they would be able to get $19 million under to be able to.
You would have to start cutting guys. It would just destroy your football team. It's a non-starter.
Absolutely. All right. So, real quick, do you think he moves this offseason or no?
No, but I don't. I was on record, so I'll explain it. I don't think he'll finish his career as a Seahawk. Why do I think that? There's no way that they'll ever come to the middle. Pete Carroll will never give in. He'll never fully give in. He gave in for a half a season, or actually a little bit short of it. From what I understand, the tape shows that they started to change the play call right before midseason. After the midseason, Russell Wilson it was hard to watch him. He really struggled.
Yeah, he was turning the ball over a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And Pete didn't like that. But the Jets game, he smoked the Jets. Well, anyone could. But anyway, you're never going to get them to agree, because Pete wants to run, Russell wants to pass. He wants to be more aggressive,
right? And
it's just you're never going. He's never going to be happy. I love what the quote that his agent Mark Rogers gave to ESPN about. Listen, we're not saying we're not demanding to be traded, but if you want to trade us, because Russell has a no trade clause, by the way, here are the teams. I love that.
Yeah. That was like his way of saying, "Oh, if you guys want to leak stuff about us, we can play this game too."
Right. So this is the offseason of quarterback empowerment. Stafford wanted out, he got his wish. Wentz wanted his wish, he got out. Deshaun Watson has not yet. Russell Wilson, he's halfway there.
Do you? I don't consider the Stafford thing empowerment, because it sounded like the new regime wanted to be able to rebuild anyway. Like, I felt like that was.
Well, he asked for it and they agreed. No, he went to them. It was his idea.
Yeah, I went to them, but I feel like they were just all fine. Like, they're starting.
Yeah, they didn't fight it. That's fair. But again, it was his idea, and they had no problem with it, because, as you said, and you're right, they're in a total rebuild. What a bad roster. They need to rebuild that. Not a lot of blue chip players, but this is an interesting offseason, man. It's just I'd never seen this, man. You and I have been covering this business for decades. I never saw, because this is not like the NBA where players control everything. This is not.
You're right.
This is not what I ever thought would happen, man. I never saw this. This is our man Andrew Brand had admit he was wrong on Wentz. Did you see that? I mean,
I know that was crazy. I'm still not convinced this is a trend. I think it's a little bit of an anomaly. We'll see. I don't know. It's funny that there were no choppers over airports like when Peyton Manning left Indianapolis to go to Denver, though. That's still the craziest offseason thing I've ever seen in my life.
That was the Cardinals, the Broncos, obviously, who got him.
Man, that was crazy.
All the teams. Yeah, well, no, that's the funny thing is where JJ Watt wanted to be traded, or released. The quarterbacks obviously are not going to be cut. They just want to be traded. It's just or see what's out there. So it's really remarkable.
Awesome. All right. So next pod, we will do
all DBs, safeties.
We're gonna corners and safeties, and I'm thinking by that time, when we drop Thursday at 6 a.m., that I think this is going to sort of be a big week coming up for the Eagles as far as transactions. I mean, we're getting closer to the new league year, and they've got to scale down. So we'll probably have some more news on that too.
Yeah, they'll have restructures done. For sure, get some more done. We'll know. There may be a trade or two. Who knows? They got to still chop money off. No doubt. There's a big challenge for their front office. And then next week, week, we're going all free agency. We're going to go position by position. Guys who we're hearing early, because this, by the way, last week was Combine Week. It would have been Combine Week. This is where free agents start talking to teams. This is where we had heard last year. We put the scoop out that the Eagles, believe it or not, we're not going to go after any free agent receivers. They didn't. I don't count the kid who opted out.
Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah, that was until August anyway. That didn't count. So they didn't go after anyone. They wanted. It's just funny how this works out. They wanted these young receivers to grow with Wentz. That didn't happen so well. So maybe they'll have to grow with Hurts here, who right now is the de facto starter.
There you go. Last year's blueprint we know just got crumpled up and thrown in the trash can, and now we enter a new era of Eagles football. All right, so we'll finish up the positional outlooks with defensive backs in our next podcast. And remember, Tuesday night, 8:00, the first Ask ITB live stream. So start sending us your questions now. Of course, look for that link. We'll all tweet it out right a couple minutes before 8:00 on our Twitter platforms at Inside Birds, at Caplan NFL, at Geoff Mosher NFL, and of course on our YouTube. You can just go straight there. 8:00 Tuesday night.
You won't miss it. Yeah,
happy to answer everybody's questions.
Sure.
That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. Big thanks to our producer Hunter Brody. Check him out on YouTube. His channel is called Sports Talk with Broads. There's more and more content there every day. His Twitter account is @Broads81. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.